Meeting as teenagers, Felix and Élodie's friendship originated out of a mutual disdain for the high society lifestyle and a fascination with exploring the ruins of the private island used to host meetings for their parents' secret society. However, their friendship would be tested when one of their explorations unleashed an otherworldly power that took both Felix's father and Élodie's parents, and eventually, in their search for truth, would take them as well. This is the disappearance of Felix Richter and Élodie Rakoto. Felix grew up traveling with his parents, who were respected German physicians and spent more time at medical conferences or working to provide humanitarian aid than they did at home. Throughout his travels, Felix was exposed to a wide array of architecture, which inspired him to diverge from his parents' legacy of medicine and to pursue an architectural career. He quickly became as respected in his field as his parents were in theirs, winning the Swiss Architect Medal and German National Design Award by age 23. Despite the outward praise and recognition, inwardly Felix lacked confidence and felt like a hack, chalking his success up to luck and connections through his famous family. Perhaps it was his introversion or social awkwardness when he was young that helped shape this view of himself. He didn't have many friends growing up and spent much of his youth when he was at home in his father's vast library, learning about architecture and history. Initially, his father tried to hire experts to help Felix learn social skills. But when that didn't seem to work, he gave up, accepting that Felix would learn when he was ready. Far from being disappointed in him, however, we learned that his father joined him in the library, helping him build models. It was here that János Richter also began sharing stories with Felix of battling a dark force as part of the Imperiate, a secret organization that Felix's parents belonged to. Felix, of course, dismissed these as mere stories that his father invented to impress him. The Imperiate would gather together each summer at Dyer Island. It was the architecture of the elegant homes on this private island that no doubt in part inspired Felix to become an architect later in life. The children of the Imperiate were encouraged to spend the summer networking with each other and practicing their public speaking, none of which appealed to the socially awkward Felix. There were others like him, and a total of 5 of them banded together into a group of friends that was labeled the Pariahs by the other teenagers on the island. However, the 5 of them took on this name gladly and preferred to spend their time apart from the others, exploring the ruins of Dyer Island. One of these other 4 Pariahs bears a familiar name, Élodie Rakoto. Growing up in Paris and part of a Parisian household, Élodie was more interested in exploring the hidden history of the city than in her schoolwork. She first traveled with her parents to Dyer Island when she was 14, joining Felix and the other 3 Pariahs in their social rebellion. It was Élodie that convinced the rest of them to sneak out with her at nighttime to explore the secrets of the island. During one of these explorations, on an unusually foggy evening, the Pariahs stumbled upon the abandoned ruins of an underground laboratory. Felix didn't want to enter the creepy place, but Élodie goaded him on. Reluctantly, he followed them in. Entering the lab, however, the Pariahs grew excited as they discovered ancient artifacts, most notably leather-bound journals illustrating inhumane experiments carried out on prisoners. Unbeknownst to them, this was the laboratory of Talbot Grimes, a Scottish chemist who performed secretive experiments developing mind-altering chemicals, and who would eventually enter the entity's realm himself and become known as the Blight. Breaking open a locked door, they discovered a room full of human remains and vials containing some kind of mysterious substance. Élodie's attention, however, was focused elsewhere. At the back of the room were some kind of circular and deep scratches clawed into the wall. She felt compelled to touch them, running her fingers along the thin grooves. Upon doing so, we're told in her lore that she began to have a vision of deep rumbling thunder, black glistening waves, an ashen sanded beach, incomplete. She was compelled to touch the ice-cold sand and draw a circle with a line in the middle. As she was doing this, a strange fog appeared in the room. Thunder roared, and the ground shook as large, dark claws began ripping through the ground, beginning to collapse the building around them. Suddenly, those stories that Felix's father told him about something to do with battling a dark force didn't seem so made up after all. Before the 5 teenagers could make sense of what was happening around them, a small group of the Imperiate appeared at the door that included both Élodie's parents and Felix's father. As the parents wielded strange instruments somehow being used as weapons against the supernatural claws, Élodie's father shouted at her to run. Felix just stared in disbelief, unsure of whether or not what he was witnessing was reality. Before any of them could move, however, they were shrouded in complete darkness. The 5 Pariahs were safe, but Élodie's parents, Felix's father, and the others who came to the rescue had vanished, never to be seen again. At first, the shared trauma drew the Pariahs together in an effort to understand what had happened to their parents and the event that they had witnessed. They spent years researching and exchanging notes, trying to make sense of it all. In the process, they reached out to others online that had similar stories of losing loved ones in supernatural ways. That said, after some time and many dead ends, the Pariahs each slowly began to lose the drive to keep investigating, choosing instead to try to forget their horrible shared experience, and they grew apart as a result. All except for Elodie, that is. For years, she dreamed of the night she lost her parents, a repeating nightmare vivid enough to wake her and leave her shaking. Elodie would often light a candle to calm herself and remind her of her grandmother's stories she used to tell growing up whenever little Elodie would have a nightmare, describing images of legendary heroes defeating enemies among rich rainforests and vast mountains. The smell of vanilla would bring back those memories and bring comfort to Elodie's grief. 14 years passed, and Elodie was the last remaining Pariah who hadn't given up searching for their parents. She scoured and translated every legend she could find that matched anything from their experience that night, and a pattern began emerging from around the world. She hunted for ancient artifacts used by cultures either seeking to destroy or resurrect whatever strange being had attacked and stolen their parents from them. She discovered various names for this thing, ranging from the abyss, to the infinite, to the whole. After recovering a stolen Morori statue that matched the look of the claws that had attacked them on that island the night their parents disappeared, she was recruited by a collector of rare artifacts named Hazra Shah. They had a symbiotic working relationship. She would secure ancient artifacts for him, and in return, he would provide her financing, equipment, and information that would further her investigation. One of the relics that she had retrieved for the collector was a set of 17th century records on a trial for a woman accused of witchcraft after giving birth to conjoined twins. There was a legend surrounding a set of engraved skulls, including the skull of this mother, the only one of which the collector lacked. One cold and misty evening, using high-tech equipment provided by the collector, Elodie located and broke into a set of catacombs underneath Paris in search of this last remaining skull. Deep within the catacombs, she discovered a massive wall of human skulls. Just as she realized what it was, she heard a noise behind her. Turning, she was immediately met with the business end of a baseball bat and knocked unconscious. As she came to, she quickly realized that she was being carried deeper into the catacombs by a man in a dark robe. She immediately recognized him as a member of the Black Veil, a powerfully well-connected and mysterious cult devoted to the entity, existing across multiple realities and known by many names. There was one rumored detail about them that was of particular importance in that moment for Elodie. They had an affinity for performing human sacrifices to what they called the Old One. She knew she needed to act. She quickly grabbed a loose skull from the endless wall and smashed it on the man's head. Elodie was able to use his momentarily stunned state to escape his grip and took off running around the nearest corner. However, around this bend, she was greeted by a knife blade in her side. Stunned, she removed the knife and quickly realized that she was dying. With her heartbeat pounding in her head, she fell to her knees and did the only thing she could think of in the moment. With her own blood, she drew the same symbol on the ground that years before had triggered the entity to manifest and steal her parents away. Immediately, she began to hallucinate the warm smell of vanilla and the tropical rainforest that had been the setting of so many of her grandmother's stories. This was her place of calm. But all was not well. What is described as a ghostly cry erupted out of the rainforest. The vines above her turned to snakes, the soil beneath her quickly turning ashen. The ground gave out and collapsed under her feet, smothering her screams in something like dense quicksand. She had finally found what she was looking for. The abyss, the infinite, the whole. After the Pariahs had grown apart and Elodie was continuing the search for their parents, Felix, on the other hand, threw himself into his work as an architect. He learned that his father was right, his social awkwardness was holding him back, and so he made an intentional effort to improve his social skills and fit in with high society. To him, it was like acting, putting forward a public version of himself that would impress clients. This gave him the opportunity to work for several architectural firms before starting his own along with a colleague named Lauren Golder. Felix continued to make a name for himself, gaining popularity within the architectural world and earning well-deserved praise. But despite his success, and no matter how much his work gained positive recognition, Felix struggled with self-doubt, fearing that his ability to act the part in public applied also to the architectural fruit of his labor. It was this that drove him to distract himself with parties and booze. That was until his girlfriend told him that she was pregnant. He was going to be a dad. Wanting to be the kind of father to his unborn child that he had growing up, Felix decided it was time to get his life together. Instead of alcohol, Felix began distracting himself with books on parenting. He also began looking for a project to prove his worth as an architect, which led him to being commissioned for a unique opportunity, one that involved restoring and updating the old Victorian buildings on Dyer Island for friends of his father. 6 months later, Felix was busy surveying the island, when suddenly, he heard a familiar voice calling out to him from the fog in the middle of the shattered ruins. Felix looked toward the sound of the voice and saw the shape of a man emerge from the fog. It was his father, or at least something that looked like him. Stunned, Felix's heartbeat pounded in his head as he stared in disbelief at the man who had disappeared so many years before. Hope filled him as he thought about his child getting to meet his grandfather and showing his dad all that he had accomplished since his disappearance. But then, to Felix's horror, his father's look changed to one of disappointment, and he turned and walked away. Without thinking, Felix ran after him into the thick fog. Felix Richter would not return from his trip to survey Dyer Island, and no one in this realm ever saw him again. On the other side of the fog, Felix would find himself in another realm, a realm that mirrors our own in many ways, but much more dark and dangerous. Soon he would find himself in a fight for survival within this eerie place, banding together with other survivors along the way. As an architect, Felix was used to working under intense pressure and meeting difficult deadlines, experience that would prove valuable in the trials that lay ahead. His background had also taught him how to make the most of worn-out tools, which was particularly useful in repairing the many broken generators that lay about this strange world to power their escape. It was not long before Felix would spot a familiar face in this unfamiliar place. His fellow pariah, Elodie, had also woken up in this fearful realm, her mortal wound at the hands of the Black Veil now the least of her worries. The same tendency that drove her to never give up looking for her parents continued to drive her through the trials. Her skills of deception and spotting what most overlook also helped both her and her teammates in their plight. As both Felix and Elodie adjusted to their newfound surroundings, many questions filled their minds, but one in particular stood out among the rest. Where were their parents? I hope you enjoyed the second entry into our lore series. If you missed our first lore video on Michaela, it will appear on screen now. To celebrate hitting 2,000 subscribers, I have opened up my Discord to whoever wants to join and help us build a welcoming and positive community. The link is in the description. If you enjoy my content and would like to see more of it, would you please consider subscribing and helping us get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of the year. As always, you are awesome, stay awesome, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.